right now as it pertains to 24-hour work, and, oh, I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, and split shifts, and 24-hour work, and of 24-hour work, how many hours are workers entitled to in terms of paid hours? So can you clarify where the law stands right now and what agencies must do before we split shifts to be in compliance with the statute?
Sure. Yeah, it's my understanding that currently the law states that if the home care workers that is doing these 24-hour shifts are not receiving 5 hours of continuous uninterrupted sleep, so that doesn't mean piecing together 5 hours of sleep, but you're not getting that rest, then they are entitled to all 24 hours of wages. It's also my understanding that for patients who really need around-the-clock care, so and they also consider the 5 hours if their caretaker is getting 5 hours of sleep, and they need around-the-clock care, so their caretakers cannot get that 5 hours of sleep, they should be receiving split shifts.
Okay. And are home care workers entitled to overtime?
I believe yes. I think there are a few exceptions with nonprofit home care agencies if they correctly apply for some exemptions, but they are entitled to overtime.
And the New York State basic wage laws apply to home care workers, correct?
Yes. And there's even additional laws, state laws, meant to, like the Home Care Parity law that applies to home care workers.
And that applies.
These laws are unfortunate.
And that applies to all non-Medicaid, Medicaid, all home care workers across the industry, correct?
I'm actually not certain on that. I think all state and federal laws apply to all home care workers, regardless of Medicaid or non-Medicaid.
And based on your experience, despite New York State having perhaps one of the nation's strongest worker protection rights that we as a legislature fought so hard to pass over the years, what happens to those rights when workers are forced into non-consensual arbitration to settle disputes?
So unfortunately, even though on the books, our state has strong laws, when it comes to the reality and it comes to enforcement of these laws, there's widespread violations. For the workers who are forced into mandatory arbitration, there's an additional hurdle in which that they're deprived of their right to even go to court like any other person, any other worker, to try to right the wrong, right? To try to recover their unpaid wages. And more, I think, more problematically, I think an issue also is that the arbitration, especially the industry-wide arbitration led by 1199, it actually opens up a pathway for agencies to continue violating the law. Because now you have said these workers cannot go to court and get relief. They have to go through arbitration. And the past arbitration that they did is giving workers back pennies on the dollar and says nothing about the continuation of these violations. So I think that, that's the impact, right? So we really need to enforce our laws, enforce them across the board. And that's the only way we'll be able to have a better home care industry.
Thank you.
Better long-term care.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for answering those questions. I bring those questions up because this is a clear warning sign for the entire home care industry beyond just Medicaid into non-Medicaid sector as well. Because if we don't call this out and have some of these uncomfortable conversations, we're literally writing a new way for providers to exploit workers that other, not just nonprofit providers, but other companies and other industries can emulate. All you have to do is figure out a path to get workers to sign off on non-consensual forced private arbitration. And no matter what you do, no matter how much you abuse and exploit the workers, at the end of the road, you can try to settle with nickels and pennies on the dollar and try to bypass any of the state laws that was designed to protect workers. So this is something that I think we should collectively call out on and try our best to figure out how to undo and at least prospectively